brother, and Susan brought out a Bible and gave me the Bible. And it is I've never seen one before, but it's the Hebrew root of the Bible. And what they've done here is they've translated both the Old and New Testament, but very literally. I mean by that basically what they're aiming for is every word that is in Hebrew or in Aramaic in the New Testament, when it's translated, it's just literally translated into the closest thing they can find of an English alternative. So consequently, I'm going to be reading from that this morning, and there's not a lot of difference between that and what I would say the New King James, except that when you translate from one language to another, sometimes the sentence structures are different. You understand what I'm saying? The sequence of the way the verbs and the nouns and so on are placed in the sentence are a little bit different. So I'm going to be reading slowly so that you can get the sense of what we're looking at here. And this is found in the Gospel of Matthew, in the 5th chapter, part of the Sermon on the Mount, the 5th chapter, and beginning with verse 38, and reading down through the remainder through 48. Matthew 5:38 through 48. He says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not stand against the evil. But whoever strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. And to him desiring to sue you, and to take away your coat, allow him also to take your cloak. And whoever shall compel you to go 1 mile, go 2 with him. He asking you to give, and he wishing to borrow from you, do not turn away." Now that's that's one of the examples, folks, of the sentence structure being a little bit confusing to us. In other words, he might be saying whoever asks you to give and whoever asks you to borrow from you. "You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those cursing you, do well to those hating you, and pray for those who take you by force and persecute you, so that you may become sons of your Father in heaven, because he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those loving you, what reward do you have? Do not even tax collectors do the same thing? And if you only greet your brother, what exceptional thing do you do? Do not the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you become perfect or complete, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." Could you unscramble that as I was reading it? Before I go any further with this, I want to take just a couple of minutes here to address that 39th verse. He said, "But I say to you, do not stand against evil, but whoever strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also." And this writer, when he does any when he makes any comments on a word or a passage or to clarify it at all, rather than having it right in the text, he puts it in a footnote. And in his footnote was an interesting interpretation of this particular passage. That passage is familiar, I'm sure, to every one of you. He who strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other one also. And he says that this is a Hebrew idiom that actually is saying, or has a broader meaning. You know what an idiom is? It's an expression in one kind of language terms to explain or to clarify or to help you understand another. For example, we have lots of them in English. If someone has a task that they're responsible for and they're not moving on it, and someone comes along and says, "We got to build a fire under him," they are not talking about lighting a torch. And we understand what they're saying, don't we? In fact, in our modern world, in this computer age, I'm telling you, we got loads of them. They boot up. That don't mean you put on galoshes before the weather, because the weather's wet. And hard drive, that isn't a long, hard road that we're traveling. So, and what he's saying is that this is an idiom. And he's saying that literally what is in the Hebrew, what it is intended to convey, and this is an interesting interpretation. What it's intended to convey to us is that if a brother offends us and he repents and we forgive him, then once we have forgiven him according to God's standard of forgiveness, we open ourselves up to being hurt again. You understand what we're saying? And when he's talking about striking you on the other cheek, he's simply talking about the possibility of you opening yourself up. So he hits you on that cheek, and you're making yourself vulnerable to be hurt again. And in reality, folks, what that's really saying is, if we forgive the way God forgives, that means we're right back to the place where he never sinned, or he never offended us. The passage here is talking to us about not only forgiving our enemies, but praying for them and do good for them. And I'm going to kind of expand that a little bit because, well, for a couple of reasons. Let me put it this way. if we forgive the people who are who are persecuting us, or who are abusing us, or maybe physically, as in some parts of the world right now, in this day, they will kill you if you have a Christian testimony. You can lay your life on the line just by making it known that you belong to Jesus Christ. That could come to us at some point in time, could it not? We're seeing all the hallmarks of a change in our attitude in our culture, and that could very well be in our future. But let me back up just a little bit and put it on a different level than just a life and death type of level. What's your reaction, for example, if you go into a restaurant and sit down at the table and make an order, you give them the attendant or the waitress your order, and they bring you your order and make some kind of a very snotty remark. What's your reaction? What would you have to say about it? Or, for example, I was over having coffee with Elaine a couple, 2 or 3 mornings ago, and she had a show on TV, a program on TV of this, what is his name, Dr. Phil? And he was doing interviews of people who had been involved in very awkward situations on airline flights. And they were interviewing a woman, or a couple, who had a little girl, 3 years old, and the flight attendant commanded her to put her mask on. And so she put her mask on. The little girl put her mask on. And after she put her mask on, the mother just made a comment, not necessarily to the flight attendant, but made just a comment, apparently to her husband,